Natalie Clark. I'm the CEO for Simon on the Streets, and welcome to the first of hopefully many podcasts with various different guests, all relating to the sector of homelessness, with which Simon on the Streets is a charity that works across Leeds and Bradford. My first guest I'm delighted to introduce is Chris Sylvester, founder of Getting Clean, who we've known for many years in various different roles within the sector through homelessness, addictions, various pieces of work we've done together. Chris is truly inspirational, and I'm really happy that he's joining me on my first podcast. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about Getting Clean and how you got there and what it's all about? Because I think people really would love to know.
Yeah, so I'll start right at the beginning and I'll give you a whistle-stop tour. So I'm Chris Sylvester, I'm the founder of Getting Clean and a spokesperson for lived experience recovery. I started using heroin as a child around about 12, 13, first introduced in the high school toilets. That opened up the doors to 26 years of addiction. So that's hospitals, jails, institutions and homelessness. Nightmare existence. At the age of 36, I found recovery, found a new way to live, and in doing so, gravitated towards support work, where we met throughout that period of time, employed for different organisations, doing different roles, but ultimately feeling like my lived experience had so much more to offer. So whilst working in services, I set up Getting Clean. So Getting Clean is a LERO, so that's a lived experience recovery organisation, and its objectives are to tackle environmental issues, reduce crime, promote sustainable recovery, and to ultimately be an enterprise, a platform for people to understand that every experience has value and that those in recovery work in a programme are assets to their community and city. So we started by doing basic things, going out, litter picking, learning to recycle what we collected, creating wildflower meadows, doing graffiti removals, all that kind of work there, focusing on cleaning the environment, hence the name, sort of a double entendre. Obviously, we're in recovery, getting clean, but we're going out and tackling these environmental issues within our communities, cleaning up. And that's where Getting Clean first formed. And it
Yeah.
was formed through frustration, seeing people just coming in and out of services and knowing that something were missing. And in my opinion, that was the lived experience offering within services in Leeds.
And when we first met Chris, and I was working in addiction services, which is obviously my background, we used to talk a lot about that missing piece in addiction services. Because, there's some really, really good addiction services, and I've worked, across Yorkshire in various different ones. But I think it is that missing piece, people seeing people recover in those communities, not being, my previous experience many years ago was people being sent away into recovery, way out of, away from families, away from communities. So people in addictions in those weren't seeing that recovery, and it's that really visible stuff, isn't it, that makes the difference.
Yeah, most definitely. And I had the attitude of kind of like New York, New York. If I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. So I got clean in Armley, where I'm from, attending mutual aid meetings and engaging in a daycare programme. And I had a real strong passion for making amends for the damage that I'd done within my community. And I'd reached a point where I realised that, the game were up and that I had to surrender, and that throughout my life, all these negative experiences that I had ultimately had to produce something positive. So looking at it from sort of a business perspective, it was 26 years of active addiction, and that's one hell of an investment. And I wanted a return on that investment.
Yeah.
I wanted something good to come from it. And I wanted to be known for more than simply committing crime, selling drugs, and being a blight on my community. I wanted to help people get clean. I wanted to help people recover and to see that recovery can be sustainable. And like I say, that people actually in recovery have so much to offer society.
And we see that. So Simon on the Streets work across Leeds and Bradford with people who are homeless, who are rough sleeping, who are at risk of becoming homeless. And, many of our clients are in the throes of addiction, either due to their circumstances or pre-existing issues, and a lot of it based on trauma, mental health, lots of different complex reasons, as you know. And again, it's that seeing that visible people who've recovered. And I think we've done a lot of work in Bradford recently around getting people into rehab. And, the stigma's really still there for people in addictions. And we're seeing that even now, where I thought things were a lot better, there's a lot more education, a lot more social media. Still, it's not seen in the way that we see it and we know exists. So it's, what are your thoughts around that sort of stigma? Are you still seeing that a lot as well?
Yeah, so that's again, that's an objective that we have a clear sort of focus on challenging that stigma, and by being of service to our communities. So focusing on people's skills and strengths to empower them to see that they can do jobs in community for like elderly, disabled people, people that need support. Us guys coming together and doing them jobs really challenges the stigma, but the stigma remains because people don't really appreciate addiction. It's criminalized and there's lots of judgments, and it prevents people entering into recovery. So, like, predominantly when you look at the recovery community, it's made up of white middle aged men. And it's a real challenge to get ladies engaged in recovery
Mm.
through fear and stigma around how they're perceived, the risk of people losing their kids, and you know the fear that goes with that. And then when we look at sort of multicultural ethnic groups, like the stigma within cultural communities prevents people from different sort of religions, ethnicities, cultures asking for help
Mm.
through fear of their sort of how they're going to be perceived within their communities, and we need to get better at that.
We do, and in this sector, they call it, certainly in health, they call it a lot, those hard to reach communities. I would argue they're not hard to reach, but no one's trying to reach them, and it's about flexing those services to make sure, like you say, women. We've seen a massive increase in women who are homeless, rough sleeping in the last couple of years. We know that there's an issue around LGBTQ and how we're serving that community, and like you say, different minority groups where the stigma within their own cultural community is absolutely massive. So it's, making sure services are bending and flexing, and they've got people who are finding those, because they're not going to rock up at A&E, they're not going to go to the GP, they're not going to present at, either on the streets or even at GP surgeries or addiction services. So we have to get better at that.
Much better. And the way that we do it, in my opinion, is by celebrating the success of recovery and the achievements of what we do. As a community, as a society, to come together to learn from one another. And anybody that's sort of in recovery, I encourage to celebrate that and to promote that fact. I wear my recovery as a badge of honor, and it helps me reach people in a different way. So when we talk about lived experience being utilized correctly and not tokenistically, it's about empowering individuals to understand that they carry a message which can't be carried by somebody that don't have that experience. When we look at the therapeutic value of one person with addiction supporting another, it's without parallel. For years I had support workers trying to encourage and engage me, professionals, healthcare professionals, psychologists, probation officers, all manner of support workers from different areas, and telling me that things were possible for me, but none of them spoke louder than my addiction. And my addiction always told me that these people that did not have lived experience, or if they did have lived experience, didn't share it with me, they didn't know what it was like to wake up with the shame and guilt, with the obsession, to use at all costs, even though the reality of it is that killing myself. But that insanity and madness of addiction, when I speak to somebody that's been there and understands, when I speak to a newcomer that attends one of our sessions, and I can sit down and talk to them and relate and identify, that's the key there. And that's the value of lived experience working in partnership with organisations. It's essential.
At Salmon on the Streets, we do have people who've got lived experience of homelessness, of addiction. And although I've worked in services, and again, we've had this conversation before about being really careful about working with people who've got lived experience and not using them as a bit of putting them on a pedestal and not giving them any support and putting them out there as the kind of, your flagship, they've recovered, look at them and aren't they great, because there's only one way for that to go. And I've seen that in services over the years. It's about support and people feeling able to share their story and but in a protected and kind of safe way. And I think when you see the magic of that, and we've seen it a lot in terms of getting people into rehab, seeing people through recovery, it does make a difference, because they're talking to somebody who's been there, who's had that experience. And we say all the time, people don't wake up on the streets. That's not where they wanted to be. It's not where they saw themselves. They didn't see themselves in addiction. Many, many things have happened. And there's so much trauma and there's so much to unpick. And although there are a lot of services out there, which are great, it can be quite fragmented as well for people having to share their story over and over again, which is re-traumatizing. But finding someone who's been there, who's had that journey, there is nothing more powerful than that, I think, in terms of getting people into recovery.
Most definitely, and like for me, it's really important that we speak about it in a way that it don't bracket somebody, that it allows. So my lived experience, for instance, allows me to reach my potential. It's a start point, but it's not the be all and end all of who I am. Because like my involvement, I've been employed in a respect where it was I were employed because I had lived experience, so to speak, and I want valued, I want listened to, and I want supported with that. And ultimately, what that meant for me is that all I were worth is my lived experience, and that's the only value that I had.
That's so important, and similar situation in that when we recruit in that way, it's about saying that you are not being employed because of that. This is about all of the other skills, everything else you bring to the table. That is a part of you, but it's not why you are getting this job, for example, because it can't be. That can't be the reason.
Mm.
Otherwise, you are just putting someone in a really tricky situation and making them feel really undervalued. Actually, you still need to have that skill set and that knowledge and that resilience
Mm.
and be able to deal with that. But your lived experience will bring something to that, but it can't be all about that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's key. I've just this today been up to HMP Leeds and been walking around there and having a look at the First Night Centre. Well, now it's a special unit for people with mental health, which is amazing. But being on D Wing and then being around prison and seeing prison officers that I knew from past and stuff like that. And then being able to communicate with other inmates that I know that are sort of on this journey, they're on this recovery wing, they're wanting to address the problems. Actually sitting down and talking with them and then members of staff and being able to be an advocate and a spokesperson for lived experience and letting people know that there's so much more to individuals than just the past and just the fact that they've got lived experience.
Yeah.
It's key to everything. And for me, it were a foundation that I decided I were gonna, like I say, it were a return on investment for 26 years. That's what I put into, and I wanted to be able to build myself up on that, but ultimately to be able to transfer the skills that I'd acquired throughout my criminality into doing something good and something positive for community.
So tell us about that. Leads us quite nicely onto the soap, which we really
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
talk about.
Right. So the soap, life changing soap.
Life
So I'm
changing.
a
Yeah.
man, yeah, I'm a man with many t-shirts. Today I've got the wrong t-shirt on. But I'll tell you about Lero Leeds after. But um, getting clean, well, I told you about the amazing work that we were doing in community. So it started with litter picking, it started with conservation work. And then as the group of volunteers grew, people had different experiences, people had different skill sets. And talking to these individuals, we realized, wow, we can do so much more for the community to challenge stigma. So we started fixing fences, decorating houses, doing DIY work for elderly and disabled people, people that are being overlooked, people that weren't getting the support that they needed. We pitched in and we come together and I knew we'd need an income stream. And I remember the first jobs that we got in, we were working with Ed Carlisle from the Green Party in South Leeds, an amazing man. and we're doing lots of work around that area, Unslet and Riverside. And I realised we ain't got no money. We need money to buy materials, and there were only little bits and bats that we were scraping around to get. So we did a fundraiser, and we cycled from Liverpool to Leeds on Canal, me and Ed, and we got 3 grand, but I couldn't do that every weekend. And like we're a kick, not a charity, so you start getting taxed on that anyway. It just didn't make sense. So as a kick, we provide services and products. And I've come from a background of selling drugs, so I understood how important it was to have a product. Yeah, and for the product to carry the ethos and embody everything that we're doing with this Getting Clean movement, this lived experience movement. So I came up with the concept of making soap to help people get clean whilst having a shower. Yeah,
Clues in the title.
yeah, well, this is it. So I had to learn how to make soap from natural ingredients because there's lots of products out there that are really damaging for environment. They're really damaging for
Mhm.
people, full of forever chemicals, sorbitol, triclosan, parabens, sulfates. So I wanted to make clean soap that were made by people that were getting clean to help fund all our community projects. And it's gone from strength to strength. I mean, we secured a seed fund, a little bit of investment initially from the Postcode Innovation Trust. We went up and pitched in Edinburgh, we were successful. We've just moved into a 4,000 square foot factory, and we have a mission to metrics model, which means that we'll donate 50% of our profits to tackling addiction nationally up and down the country at a grassroots level. So when we started as a Lero, we found it really difficult to get money. Like I was talking about that fundraising,
Mm.
cycling, scratching my head thinking how we're going to get money. There's lots of other Leros out there up and down country that need the support. They need to help understand how they can position themselves in a sustainable way to continue growing in their communities because it's a requirement. So I came up with the idea of us donating the money, 50% of our profits, to supporting the growth of other Leros up and down the country. Now, Getting Clean Soap is focused on that mission. Our mission is to ensure that every addict in the UK has access to peer support and employment opportunities. To make that possible, we've had to set up a new enterprise, get some new t-shirts, and that's Lero Leads, which will then turn into Lero UK after we've designed the model to be able to replicate it up and down country and offer support to anybody that needs it. So that's with governance, structure, business plan, looking at creating sustainable groups within communities that aren't reliant on funding and grants.
Because it is tricky out there for charities at the moment. It's been a really tough couple of years and it's not getting any better. And like you say, Simon on the Streets, we rely on bids and grants, corporate support. There's definitely not as many bids and grants out there as there were a couple of years ago. So I think charities now have really got to look at what else they can do and, what is out there. And, I've watched you, Chris, over the last few years, and it's just been nothing short of remarkable, your growth and how you've thrown yourself into absolutely everything. And now, I mean, you're wearing about 4 different hats at the moment, but it's really exciting to see how it's taken off, from coming to our big sleep out event, selling your soap.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think you've outgrown that now, but we still love you to come. But, you've got a really amazing product. And actually, it's a really great product, by the way, Get the Soap. It is a lovely product. But the backstory behind it, and people, I do think now, certainly, there's a lot of people who are very socially minded, certainly around the environment, as you've said. So everything you're doing really fits that kind of social mind, thinking about other people, the environment, sustainability. It's really exciting, really
Yeah,
exciting.
it is, and it's like I say, it fills me with passion every day to get up and see the people that are employed now. We've got 7 employees, that 6 of them are in recovery. To see them rebuilding their lives and having a platform ultimately to develop on through it all came from picking litter, like with an idea and a vision. and the passion and getting people to believe that they're one more than the past,
Yeah.
you know, and that we can make a difference. So every day now, it like poses lots of challenges. It's very difficult. But some of the greatest achievements that we have, it's the people that we're supporting.
Absolutely. And I think unfortunately the people that we support, and as I've said before about things like stigma, but you know, the reason they feel like the no more than their addiction or their criminal past is that I think a lot of services are set up like that to make them feel like that. I've talked before about different services, re-traumatizing people, asking the same old questions, not really listening, not having the time often to give the support that they need. So there are some great services, but they haven't got the capacity to do that extra bit. The stuff that Simon on the Streets are doing with people is a lot of that emotional support, which I know from services years ago when I was in addiction, some of the stuff we do around, sitting all day in a doctor's surgery, for example, or just meeting people a couple of times a week for a cup of tea, it might not be seen as an outcome that you can class as a meaningful outcome to go towards someone's recovery, whether that's getting them accommodation or whether it's getting them out of addiction. But actually, they're really important steps for people, that being listened to, feeling valued, and that's why a lot of the people we support just don't have that.
Yeah, and like I say, some amazing work being done by you guys that don't really get the right recognition if you focused on outcomes and stuff like that. Thankfully, it's not commission led, so you're not having to deliver them outcomes. You're fundraising to deliver outcomes that are real to help people reintegrate back into society, to help people understand that there's an opportunity for them to receive the support that's needed. You know, and a lot of it is, like I say, it's really difficult to weigh it up. You know, like how do you gauge an outcome? For me, our outcomes we see them in the community,
Absolutely.
and the hope ambassadors. They're going out there. They're carrying a message of hope through their actions.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. It's that kind of, for me, I've been here 6 years and my background was all commission services. And the joy of coming here was that, oh, we don't have to do that anymore. We're not restrained by targets. We can change the way we work as and when we need to. There are no time limits on the amount of support we will give someone. Then obviously there's the headache of, but actually where's the money coming from?
Mm.
And that has changed. There's been ups and downs in the last few years, but it's about constantly looking for a different, trying to get the message out, because part of the difficulty, I suppose, for us as a homelessness charity is I think there's a lot of other charities out there that are homeless services. And I think when people think about homelessness, they automatically think about giving food out, soup kitchens, that kind of thing. And that's not what we do. We're very much highly trained, specialised, working with people on the street in that sort of chaos and complexity. So it's trying to really educate people about the work we do, but also about why people are homeless. And again, such a multitude of reasons, but people don't really see it. And I think we still get a lot of that feedback from people we talk to around not really understanding why in this day and age we've got so many people who are rough sleeping, and we seem to have a lot of services, but yet why are people still falling through those cracks? Why are we still seeing the numbers that we're seeing, across the UK?
Yeah, I think in a nutshell, for me to, I mean, there's lots of it's such a broad sort of subject to look at, but I think, like you said, it's the root causes of the problems, and I'm a massive believer in the importance of community, and that's what we built up, a community of people with lived experience that supports the wider community in society.
Yeah.
You know, coming together to help each other, learn from each other, regardless of age, race, sexual orientation, color, creed, religion, lack of religion, any of that stuff there. The one common thing that we all have is we're all in recovery, yeah, from addiction, and we're all learning from each other. And these people that we work with, I call them miracles, the hope ambassadors. They carry that message regardless of where they're from or where they're at. We're about supporting community. And I think that that's how we do tackle the issues that we face as a community, in a way that we're able to learn from one another and accept each other rather than having divides within society. You know, people being open minded, willing, and honest and humble ultimately, you know, in their approach to the neighbours.
And I think it's really tough environment at the moment. It feels very negative around that sort of community stuff. When we were going through COVID, that first sort of 6 months, community seemed to really come together, and I remember feeling this real positivity about, wow, everyone's really, coming together and they're doing stuff, and then this last couple of years, it's just been that seems to be getting worse, and I think there's definitely some injection of positivity needed, and that communities working together, because there's just a lot of hostility out there at the moment. Our workers are seeing it across Leeds and Bradford. I think it's been perpetuated by a higher power than us sat here, and we know lots and lots of reasons that probably need another 2-hour podcast to discuss, but. It's not a great place to be for our services, because there's not a lot of that community positivity, and we need more of that.
No, there's too many fingers of blame
Yeah,
being pointed, because that's the narrative that we're fed, and like, I won't get political, don't worry. But ultimately, like I say, it's about us understanding and learning from each other. Without having judgment, accepting this is where we're at. How can we make it better as a community?
yeah,
What can we learn from each other? What difference can we make as a collective? And this is what I was speaking to staff at HMP Leeds just now about. They've got this departure lounge that they're creating. It's going to be an environment for people to leave custody, so they can get support that they need.
yeah,
And I've said the people that you need to be talking to ultimately to shape this is the guys that are on the wing. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? There needs to be like ultimately a council created so people understand what support's available, and how they can receive that support. And for years, as a person in addiction, I didn't believe or have the potential to achieve because I wasn't aware.
no,
My spirit were awoken through my recovery, and I realized that I can, I can rebuild my life, that change is possible. And that's where we come back to these ambassadors of hope that I talk about, people in recovery. Such powerful messages being carried through action, through these people coming together, being of service, regardless of where they're from or what's going on and what's happened in the past, being solution focused. And I think that's key. But I think it's about us listening to each other and understanding, and trying to move away from this sort of encouraged ideology, that's presented to us through media channels and stuff like that. But like I say, I won't get.
no. I was going to say that's another podcast, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky to navigate in the field we're in, and in services. But yeah, we are seeing it, and we have we just try and remain positive. We carry those messages, and like you say, there's something about what we're trying to do a lot more of is really talk about the really positive stories. We talk about we had a really terrible year last year for the charity, in that we lost a lot of people. So I suppose when you work in this field, you're kind of used to that. It doesn't make it any easier, but you get used to losing people. We often lose people we support when they're in accommodation and they're sort of getting their lives together and things are good, and a lot of the time it's people's health that just
Mm.
we people are so resilient on the
Yeah,
street,
yeah,
and in addictions, and you often wonder, wow, they keep going and they've got all these
yeah.
things thrown at them. But quite often, people we've worked with, when they do get to that point, we've had a lot of people who just it's kind of things have unravelled, and we've put that support in place. But we lost 17 people we supported
Wow.
last year, and that
And that's
is
17 people.
you know
17 people.
people, not numbers, and really people that we had formed really strong relationships with because of the nature of the work we do. It's not just a case of signposting or seeing now and again. These were people who we had really worked with, built relationships with, spent time with them, whether it was getting them accommodated, seeing them through healthcare problems, mental health. Really, really strong relationships with people, and that hits the team really, really hard. And for me, it's, managing that, it's making sure, how are we looking after the people who are doing this job as well, because it's a really it's a hard job, it's really tough. So the charity went through, it was tough last year for us, for the team, but what we have to take from that is some of the really positive stories,
Mm.
people who had died in hospices, for example. You know, there's no we'd actually got them into palliative care, which a lot of people who are homeless don't get.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. There's no formal pathway to that. So actually, you know, we're sort of saying, actually, we can take, you know, they died with dignity and with love and around people who loved them and supported them. But that is really hard. And so we're really trying to focus on, look, there's some really positive stories. We're doing incredible work and we've just got to keep going. And as we were talking earlier about it being a bit difficult and grants and funding, we just want to keep going. As same for you, you know, we want to be out there. We want to keep helping people. Things aren't getting any better, so we know we're needed more than ever as well, which I'm guessing is the same for you, Chris. You're
Ultimately, yeah, I think, like you've highlighted there for me, what really hits home is the need for collaboration over competition, people coming together, and it's difficult when we talk about funding and grants for charities and organisations because that means that there's a lot of competition out there for these pots are getting smaller, so the support is needed more and more, and it's harder to get. And then people being in competition means that there's an unwillingness to collaborate, so to speak. But we've got to remember the people that we're supporting.
yeah,
They're the primary purpose, the reason why we're out there doing what we're doing. So we have to really work together to be able to deliver services in a way that they're impactful.
absolutely. We can't be everything to everybody. You know, we know that as Simon on the Streets, we can't. And hopefully, we'll be doing a bit of work together soon as well. With
Yeah,
it, if you
yeah.
want to talk a little bit about that project,
Nice, nice.
nice
Yes,
segue.
so nice. Yeah, it's nice to get us in there. So hope works because it does, and that's the title. That's the name on the tin, and that's what you'll see on gable ends of buildings in artworks. Now, that will be presented. It's a collaboration between um, Bevan Healthcare and Getting Clean and Forward Leads Harm Reduction Department. And it means that we're going to be going out and approaching people that are rough sleeping, hard to reach people, we'll say, to empower them and help them understand that they can be stakeholders in their recovery. It's about building community. So we're going to be surveying as to what's kind of going wrong in city, how we can make things better, but to give people a voice and using art as a way to break the ice, form these community groups, starting off in South Leeds, bringing people together from different communities, from different cultures, and people that are homeless in a sort of the idea is to create a forum where people can design artwork that goes on end of buildings, on council buildings, and commissioning artists then to create something really special that delivers meaning in lots of ways, and then ultimately the whole project allowing us to learn from each other within community, to challenge stigma, and to create and develop something that's visually there, that tells a story, that tells lots of stories. So I'm really excited about it. Obviously, we'll be leaning on you to get involved as well. Um,
I think it's a big part of that, or you were saying at the beginning, is that it's listening to the voices, it's getting that understanding, that feedback. And you know, we talk, and it was bandied around a lot many years ago around co-production
yeah,
and that sort of making it meaningful. But actually, it's about really, you know, really listening. It's not just what we're doing with that then. So if people we're supporting are telling us something, well, that's not working well. What are we doing with that then? And who can we speak to make sure you know that changes? And I think that's really important, that's that collective, the voices of the people we support and how it helps us change the way we work to support them as well.
ultimately, yeah, that's how it has to be. What we're going to be doing is focusing on offering opportunities to people to become empowered. So how we're approaching things, it's not like we're going to come in with a magic wand and try solve all the problems, but we're really going to listen to people, and we're going to, when I say survey, I don't know whether that's the right word, but you know, we're going to find out how people truly feel around the support that's offered in Leeds, how it could be better, how they could be involved in making it better. And like I say, being able to bring these people together in a way where they feel like they're valued and listened to, and that they are making a difference, and being able to actually see that they're invited to community groups and that they're respected and that it's not just a tokenistic add-on or we're going to co-produce something. No, it's going to be led by people with lived experience that are supporting people that are carrying that message of hope and that are empowering individuals to, be, like I say, become stakeholders in their recovery journey. You know, relying on working with services
Yeah.
to be able to deliver that in a way that's kind of like streamlined. There's lots of talk about how we make that work and how we can get that momentum going and keep it going to get people, you know, from one place to another.
And I think that'll come from, I suppose the good thing about that is you're not going in with any sort of set ideas around what people are going to say. You know, it is very much about, well, let's wait and see what kind of comes back. And that should shape the way you work, which is exactly how it should be. And hasn't been or never has really felt like that. You know, you can't, when we work with people now, when we talked about targets and outcomes, the targets for us are around what the people we support are telling us they want and need, not what somebody else is saying they should have.
Yeah,
So, you know, that immediate need might not be accommodation, actually. The immediate need might be something completely different, but we'll work with that because that's what they want. You know, that's
yeah,
what they see as important to them. So I think that's going to be a really interesting and an exciting piece of work for kind of us to be involved with around, you know, work, you know, supporting people to work with you to get to those, because I think they'll trust that as well,
yeah.
because it is people in recovery. I think, you know, there is a level of mistrust for people as well who've been bounced around services, and I get it, you know, but I think that's where the lived experience stuff really comes in.
Well, it definitely does because for years throughout my journey of homelessness and addiction and sort of criminal justice areas, it were always us and them. Always us and them. If you had a
Mm.
lanyard on, you know, I wasn't going to believe anything that you said. And I was just going to try and manipulate you to get what I wanted, or to end the conversation quickly so I could leave because I didn't really see it as being something. I thought people that worked in services did it because it were a job and they got paid to do it. And I didn't understand that there's some really good people out there that
Mm.
genuinely care because it were always us and them. And like spending time today in HMP Leeds, seeing the passion that some people have that are working in recovery sector and, you know, dart team and trying to get things off ground and make a difference so that they've got something to offer people an opportunity when they leave the gates and reintegrate back into society. It's so important. But having that place and that understanding is key, and that trust is a massive
Yeah,
element.
it is. It's huge. Yeah, it's exciting to see where that'll go. And what else first? So what's next then? So you've got, as if you haven't got enough on, but do you want to talk a little bit about Lero as well? I know you've kind of mentioned it.
Yeah, so Lero Leeds ultimately it's it's an organisation that's been set up because Getting Clean is focused on soap production. And we started off by doing all that amazing community work, which we don't want to lose sight of and which we want to keep on engaging people in. We want to keep on creating pathways for people in active addiction to find recovery. So naturally, us donating 50% of our profits to lived experience recovery organisations, we set up a new one called Lero Leads to be able to sort of create a blueprint that will allow us to have three structural pillars. So that's recovery, community, and enterprise that will help other groups nationally up and down country sort of structure themselves in a way where they have their own autonomy and identity, their own brand, so to speak, just being supported by Lero UK.
Right.
And it'll all start in Leeds. We'll get it right. We'll get the right buy-in. We're working with council, you know, we're working with academics, businesses, other charities, third sector organisations, Forward Leads, all these amazing organisations that are coming together with a common goal of helping tackle the problems that we're facing in society. So it's really exciting stuff. And it will be like a national sort of approach that we have eventually, but we're just getting it right in Leeds first.
Yeah, makes sense, and it's ambitious, but I think you're also being really practical about it. I think that let's get it right in Leeds. Let's know you've got that community, you've got those connections, you've got some brilliant partnerships and people who are like, like us, who are like really rooting for you and want it to work. So yeah, it's just going to be exciting to see how that all goes. And we're here because we love working with you guys.
Beautiful.
Oh, it's a lovely way to end to say that. Well, I think that brings us to a kind of nice close.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure as it always is, and we'll be hopefully with you on some of those journeys, which
Yeah,
which
most
will be really
definitely.
exciting. And hopefully tune in. We'll be doing some more of these podcasts over the next few months. I think some of my takeaways from today are just around, we talked a lot about community, how important that is, education, educating people around homelessness, addiction, trauma. And if you are interested and you don't know much about this stuff, we're always happy to talk about that. So get in touch with me, get in touch with Chris. We'll have all your details on our website and platforms as well, so you can make contact with Chris. But yeah, it's really important to have that community and really understand what's going on in your own community as well. And I think just that message of hope. I think we are very hopeful about the work that we do. We're really passionate about it. We care, and we know it works. So we just want to keep going. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again.
And I just want to say as well, I hope this don't get edited out. Visit www.gettingclean.co.uk for some life-changing soap.
It is amazing soap, I have to say. Thank you.